Hello there, Ben Simpson from Vibe Entertainment here once again. Finally, films and TV shows are finally coming out after this long dead period due to the coronavirus. It seems that all the production companies and studios wanted to push it back, hoping the autumn would be, a more cleaner time of space to release all their content. But as it's still going on, that might be not the case. But I'm glad to be, back in the cinema, which I have been back in the cinema. And the first film I watched back in the cinema is Christopher Nolan's Tenet. Big Daddy Nolan is back. He's back, man. I am a self-confessed huge Nolan fanboy. I understand the weaknesses and faults with some of his films, like The Dark Knight Rises and Interstellar. But while you're in the cinema, his films are just the absolute best. The huge wide scope, the spectacle of them, just the hugeness of the music and the cinematography and the big heady concept he comes up with and puts in an accessible way for audiences to digest these really ambitious narrative topics and conventions that he plays around with. I think there's a lot to admire with Christopher Nolan, and I was obviously really looking forward to watching his new film. He's been somewhat of a saviour of cinema right now, or at least self-imposed, as he's delayed this film until it hit the cinemas. And I was lucky enough a few weeks ago to see it in IMAX, which is the way to watch his films, as he shoots most of it on IMAX, which most filmmakers don't do, usually just upscaled. But as he shoots with mostly IMAX, he makes huge use of just the wide panoramic, huge image that he puts on there for us to enjoy. Now, a lot has been hidden away in the marketing. You might have a slight idea what it's about. Luckily, he's quite on top of the marketing, as he doesn't want to give anything away before you actually see it. And knowing from the trailers and knowing how he usually approaches these films, a very cerebral, technical, complex way, I was really looking forward to this film. And after seeing it, while I really enjoyed it, I don't really know if it is a great film, as it's very hard to follow and not in a interpretive, imaginative way. It's more of, I don't really understand why these people are doing this at this time. The concept of Tenet and reversing time, going backward in time and forward in time, I somewhat understood, but just the basis of a bunch of characters are going to a location to do something, I wasn't really up to speed with why they were doing it and what the benefit of it was. And I don't want to critique the film too much because of that. I feel like a big reason as to why this is the sound mixing for this film is so overbearing and overblown. The score takes over a lot of the dialogue, a lot of the time. This is a film where you need to understand each line spoken, so you understand how this time travel mythology works, but also, what the next thing they're going to do. There's a lot of heist sequences in the film, which are hugely enjoyable to watch. I mean, Christopher Nolan knows how to shoot set pieces like no one else. He's pretty much the modern, in my opinion, James Cameron, in doing mostly things practical and doing things in the most heightened, maximalist way you can possibly do them. And the score, which is very, very good, accompanies those set pieces and action sequences so well. But when it's just, a two-hander with two characters talking and giving each other important information, the score is just cushioning their dialogue. And it's very, very hard to understand most of the time what they're even saying. And it doesn't help that a lot of the dialogue are through walkie-talkies and gas masks and thick, dodgy Russian accents. It can make it quite a task to understand what is even happening and why it's happening. Now, I don't want to mark the film too much down, because I imagine when I want to revisit it, which I really want to do, I'll pick up more and more and understand what the film is going for a lot more. But first time viewing, it was quite confusing just to follow it just from a plot and story structure standpoint, not like a weird metaphorical, Lynchian way of what does this mean, what does that mean, more in the very practical, basic, why are they doing this type of meaning, which can be quite frustrating. And in my screening, which was packed, I saw quite a few people leaving, and I had to guess the reason why they were leaving is they didn't know what the hell was going on. Now, on the other side of that, there's a lot to admire of a $250 million blockbuster being this ambitious. You don't get that anymore. They rely on much more on franchises and sequels and prequels and established properties, where Nolan's one of the only, if not the only, filmmaker right now making these huge big budget films with crazy complex ambition and very heady, almost art house approaches, but making them accessible enough by having the characters, feed exposition to each other, which has always been a critique with Nolan, but I'm fine with it as he's trying to appeal to a mass audience, but also introduce these complex ideas, which I think is very admirable. And in films like Inception and Memento and even Interstellar, they work very well. But in this film, because of the way the sound mixing is played, it does leave someone like me who's quite a movie avid watcher and can keep up with sometimes, hard to understand films. This was a challenge. I also think one of the weaknesses of the film is that the character development is pretty much nonchalant. You watch these really smartly charismatic, well-dressed men do their thing, and while the performances are very good, there's not a lot of soul and a lot of heart to what's going on in the film. It's a very kind of technical, heralded film, which I'm all for when the sequences are this, at times, mind-blowing. There's some brilliant reverse and chronological time sequences where some characters are going backwards and some are going forwards and they intertwine, and I'm sitting there going, how the hell have they done this? But overall, how it matches to the rest of his filmography, this is somewhere in the middle to potentially lower tier, but I imagine it might grow as, the more times I watch it and even have the subtitles on, I can understand, every single move they make, and even understand how the technical mythology of the time travel works, because even that was somewhat hard to keep up. And I don't know if that's a failure from a writing perspective and not making sense of it, or because the sound mixing is so muddy that it makes audiences hard to keep up with it. Overall, I would really recommend it, as again, there are some of the best sequences no one's ever done are within this film, but it's not the same kind of massively crafted, heady sci-fi adventure like something Inception is, nor is it the very thought-provoking, cerebral nature of something like Memento. It's a awkward in between, but I still very much recommend it.